Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on OwlScoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 5, Episode 9. Coming to you this week with some new equipment, some new podcasting equipment. Generous enough to help us out with the equipment, Sam Cohn, the WHIP podcast director, who's also going to be doing some stuff with us at OwlScoop.com. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and I mean, you could call it help, but I was here. I looked through the instructions, and we got it working. That's all that matters.
Your presence,
The way
really
you
did.
said that made it seem like Sam, like, don't worry, I got a guy. He provided
Yeah.
the equipment for
I
us.
said,
Okay,
you
help
guys
us.
take a step back. Don't worry.
Graham just sang Lionel Richie part of the time.
Yeah, I'm a little upset I just deleted that track.
Yeah,
You,
you really
uh,
shouldn't
you
have. That was
Told
blackmail.
the
You could
story
have
about
used.
how
Look,
you struggled in
there's
middle school with
I'm
certain
about
things.
to have a son, so I'm looking forward to this in my life. There are periods where
Oh,
you
congratulations.
have to tell, thank you,
Yeah.
Sam. Where you have to tell your kid you smell, so put deodorant on,
Right.
or you smell, brush your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
My mother apparently skipped the second one for a little while. I had to figure out the cruel eyes and voices of Lineville Middle School.
Oh, Lionville Middle School. That's where I went to church for a few
I
years.
think you told this story
Lionville
last
Junior
year.
High.
I don't think I
But
said
maybe
on
it
the
might have been
pod.
off
My
mic.
my brother was baptized in Lionville's gym.
Now, see how Sam looks very fashionable. I mean, people in Philly aren't going to like him for wearing. He's wearing a Boston Celtics T-shirt,
Got to fit.
but he has his pants. What would you say? They're just rolled.
They're
tight rolled?
cuffed.
They're cuffed.
Yeah, they're cuffed.
So in the mid '90s, like late '80s, early mid '90s, you would cuff or tight roll your jeans. Awkward John DeCarlo.
This is John being condescending to you.
To me?
No, I'm not. I'm not
Explaining things.
Oh, okay. I
Well,
thought it was
you
going
do
to work
this-
this
you
into
do
like
this
an
all the
insult
time.
or something.
If I say this, I'm going to open myself up to all sorts of criticism before I even finish this from you. Consider myself to be a relatively intelligent person. Here's where you're going to cut it.
We'll give it to you.
Sure. Let's assume that's
So people started cuffing their jeans,
sure.
and I just rolled them up. I'm like, they don't look right. And like, I loved high school, junior high, Lineville junior high. I was just scary, just scared, awkward. And I'm walking around one day.
Growing hairs where you don't know where you're supposed to grow hairs.
You Downingtown East losers. I can't even believe it. Continue.
I ended
Anyway,
up at West.
so I roll my jeans up, but I don't fold them.
Okay.
So this guy walks by me in the hall. He gives me a shoulder. He goes, "Dude, if you're not gonna tight roll your jeans right way, don't even do it." I was like destroyed.
That
I
is
go
like
into,
the
like-
most 80s, 90s like sentence I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Well,
You're not
I don't
gonna tight roll
want
your-
to turn myself into the fashion guy on week 1 or my first episode here.
No, it just
But you
reminds
do
me
have
of-
to roll jeans and khakis. You do cuff slightly
cuff 'em,
differently.
You fold them over.
It's
a little
not the
bit.
exact same.
So I go over to I think I literally like a home ec class next. Do I wait to talk to one of my friends? No, I literally go over to this girl, and I'm not even trying to impress her. I'm like, how did you do that? And she's like, "Oh, hon, you have to fold them over first." I was like,
Oh, hon.
of course. Yeah, maybe it was a time of affection, 80s.
You know why I'm going to give you a pass on this? Because this is what, like 1988 or something?
Probably
80s
yeah.
or 90s?
Yeah.
If Sam
I
or
was
Graham or
-10 at the
myself
time.
had that problem,
look
you
it
could just
up.
Google it. You could look at
Right.
YouTube.
No,
you could
Google
go to
doesn't
how
exist.
to.
It's true.
You
Good
were
point.
forced
I
to
would have
put
had to-
yourself out there to a 13-year-old girl, which is the second worst thing in the world to a 13-year-old boy. So you had no helpful resources.
I actually just last week, 2 weeks ago, one of my roommates came in my room in the morning and said, "How do I cuff my pants?"
All right, so
and
I
I
don't
showed
feel
him
so
how
bad.
to do it. And within an hour, he got an ad on Instagram for cuffed pants.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Wow.
creepy.
Yeah.
Within the
They're
hour.
everywhere now.
Kind of like the loop, swoop, and pull thing. Like someone's like just
Bunny
telling them,
ears.
you don't get this from.
well, no, loop-de-loop and pull, and your shoes are looking cool is what
No,
you
he's
should
talking
have
about
said.
Big
What's that
Daddy.
from? Big
Literally
Daddy.
never heard that for my life, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got
this is
context
fun.
clues.
This
In the end,
It's a SpongeBob reference.
No,
Sam.
no,
Yeah,
no.
okay, I got
In
you.
Big
Yeah.
Daddy, when Jon Stewart claims the kid
I
at the
had someone
end,
with me.
they're working on how to tie shoes, and he's like, "Oh, loop,
Okay.
swoop, and pull." It's like, no, bunny ears.
Yeah.
Bunnies seem to work.
So Sam obviously knows how to cuff or tight roll his pants. I did not until I asked a random stranger in school. And then after that, I literally raised my hands like, "Can I excuse myself, go to the bathroom?" Go to the bathroom, tight roll my jeans. I felt like $1 million. Did anything change for me socially for a while? No.
He was
But
elected to homecoming.
no.
All because of his jeans.
The rest of his
I don't
time in
think
high
so.
school, he had girls hanging out by his locker.
He was
You saw-
quarterback
you saw-
of the football team.
You saw a picture of me in 10th grade standing by the.
I have more pictures of you as a 16-year-old in my phone than I do of my wife.
Wow.
And with that, we'll transition into all sorts of football and basketball related stuff
I have
here at the
15
Scoop.
photos in embarrassing photos of John. There are 15 photos.
Can you
in this
share that
album.
with me, please?
I think I have. I think I've shown you them all before.
You showed me, but can you please send that to me?
Anyway, let's go.
Let's continue.
All right. So,
It's my favorite.
with that long drawn out, I hate you.
Just him stretch.
There's a picture that Kyle has, which I never knew that he took. Where is that? The UMass trip?
Yes,
Yeah.
2015.
Dude, I got a bad back. I'm stretching.
Yeah,
Stretching out
fine.
the hamstrings. And
I have to leave
anyway.
in 5 minutes.
No, anyway. All right. So we do have a lot to get into. Again, thank you to Sam for being here, and thank you all for sticking with that. Just in case you did that long digression about mid to late '80s fashion. So we are going to recap just about everything that went wrong up at Buffalo for Temple, and of course Jeff Collins is coming to Lincoln Financial Field this Saturday. Prepare yourself for all the cliches and all the fun stuff that will come with that. But anyway, and of course we got mailbag questions as well. Temple's now 2-1 because they did not play well at all. But Buffalo, they were what favorites? What was the point spread in this?
14.
Yeah. And so we're recording this on a Tuesday. Obviously, every week they have their weekly Tuesday media session. So Rod Carey spoke. Several of the players spoke. We're going to play an interview for you a little bit later with Sam Franklin. I got a chance to talk to him. And one of the things he said was that we just kind of essentially felt like we were never into it and we got up for things too late. The turnovers, another special teams gaffe. Before they know it, they're playing from behind. Anthony Russo looked like with almost every pass he threw like he was trying to score 14 points at a time.
And this was after an ideal start, really, too, where they got the interception on the first drive and then scored right away.
And this is when you tweeted out your stat, and you said when Kyle's away, Graham's stats will play.
Yes.
B-.
That's fair.
But they have, again, three weeks, first 3 games of the season, they score on their opening drive. So as you said, it was an ideal start to the game, and then things just came unraveled after that. Mm-hmm. Kyle, you were in Long Island at a wedding.
I was.
So I'm going to ask you your thoughts on the game and Long
Only
Island.
watched the first half. Then I spilled prime rib and didn't. I spilled the horseradish and didn't realize I spilled the horseradish. So I just kept walking. And apparently, a waiter got upset at me, but it was good. Seemed like quicksand on the football field, though. Yeah, everything started great, and then bad plays, a lot of turnovers, bad snap on punt again, which obviously led to the demotion of Lurch and the input of Ronald Gaines. But at a certain point, I think they dug too big of a hole. So even though they played like the better team the second half, or at least the fourth quarter, they dug themselves too big.
What I'll be interested to see is how they, well, obviously, it's a given, how they respond this week against the Georgia Tech offensive line that hasn't been good, has been set.
Stinks.
Yeah, they're not.
Stinks. And they just lost their starting left tackle.
Right. So they haven't been great. Rod Carey talked last week about how good Buffalo was up front on the offensive line and on the defensive line, and they didn't get much pressure at all on a true freshman quarterback. Now, granted, they spot them early points, so they really couldn't get this kid in obvious passing downs, passing situations, and it showed. And just it was just ugly. It was just really ugly.
And to be fair, you looked at the stat sheet at the end of it. Temple ended up gaining more yards than Buffalo just because every Buffalo possession seemingly was in the red zone already, or at least halfway down the field. So it was pretty easy for them to kind of find a way into the red zone, which is something Temple was good at against Maryland. But there was a drive toward the end of the first half where they just ran the ball down Temple's throats, and there's nothing they could do about it. And the offensive line for Buffalo totally dominated anything up front for Temple all game. And it seemed like running was going to be the plan for Buffalo, and you thought that Temple could handle that, and they definitely could not.
I was talking to a buddy I said, hey, if coming into this game, if you would have said Temple outgained them and forced 2 turnovers, would you have thought that it was possible that Buffalo put up 38 points? And he said, yeah, the yardage might be a little misleading because the end zone kept getting in the way. And I was like, oh, fair enough.
That's a great way to put it.
Fair enough.
And and it was also just like bad luck in some places too. It all compounds on each other when you're trying to play from behind. And that pick 6 was a great example of Russo trying to do too much, just barely missing his receiver. It's tipped and picked.
The one he threw off Barbone's hand.
Yeah.
And, the bad snap was one thing, and now again they have a new long snapper there. They really did. I'm curious to ask Colin Thompson about this. I know this is going to sound like a Hokie fanish type of thing to say. I know that Jeff Collins has been over the top and was over the top when he was here about like getting guys to literally jump up and down, money downs, and all that stuff. But they are a different team on the sideline. Now again, if they win, nobody cares. But there isn't, when they're warming up before games, they are a little bit more reserved. I don't know if that has an effect, and you could argue that it doesn't have an effect on how they start games because they have scored on their opening drive three straight games. But this was a first real dose of adversity that they faced, and They didn't respond well. Sam Franklin said they weren't too deflated after he thought he had that return. The guy was clearly down, but they
that
just
changed
didn't.
everything too.
Yeah, of course, but they just, I mean, once it came unraveled in a hurry.
And that's something Colin said too when he brought up that point. He said, I just want to see them when they have to battle back from something. And that was their first test, and they failed it.
And Carey? Did you say
No, he's
Collins?
saying Colin was talking.
Colin,
Oh,
not Collins.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got you. I thought
Colin
you said
said with
Collins,
this
yeah.
new coaching staff under Carey.
Isaac Moore had been playing pretty well. He gives up a sack that leads to a fumble. That didn't bode well for them. I guess these guys are gonna have to figure out, okay, is this stuff just the product of one bad week, or did Buffalo expose some flaws? I mean, Isaac Moore he's a true sophomore, so he's going to have moments like that, although he has played pretty well. And Graham is now motioning to us that he has to leave for class, so
To
Graham
put
is
some
stepping
perspective
out
in
like
here,
Joe
we've been
Jackson.
here for about an hour. It probably took 55 minutes or so to set up
just
the
made-
new equipment. So
I just made an 80s reference that no one will get.
yeah,
Joe Jackson stepping out to great 80s tune.
Interesting. All right, well, I'm
Little
glad I know
Joe
that
sure
now.
can sing.
Graham's stepping out.
I'm going to pass off my seat to Sam, or my mic stand at least. So
There you
carry
go.
on.
So I don't know if we just hold on to it.
Yeah. All right, so we know what happened up at Buffalo. Not good. I mean, we'll talk more about little bits and pieces of the game here as we bring in some interviews into the mix here. But let's talk about this Georgia Tech game. Sam, I actually want to ask you this question because I guess we could ask this of Graham, but you're a student here. Are students going to show up for this game Saturday? What is the mindset of the student Temple football fan? Is there any buzz for this game? Are people going to go to this game, or is it still kind of par for the course where people are like, yeah, I'll go hang out and tailgate, but then not go in?
So that Maryland game, per Kyle's tweet, had 30,000 was their Temple's recorded attendance. I think if there is a game that has more than that, it's got to be this one. I think people are going to tailgate no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I think if there is a game that people go inside more for and that people show up more for, I think it's definitely this one.
Twice in Sam's cadence, he stopped after "if there is a game." I was like, "Do you know something I don't know, Sam?" like, look, I just not play.
There's gonna be some sort of protest.
You never know. I just wonder sometimes, and we talked about this with the casual Temple fan, like if they process that, like, hey, this is your former coach coming in. I would think that maybe because it's so fresh, it's not like this was 2 years later. It's not like Baylor came in and is playing this
Right.
week. It's literally he was your coach 10 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that resonates with a lot of people.
So obviously the main conversation topic this week is Jeff Collins is coming back. For those people who don't know this, I always say this because I get this question sometimes, like, did they schedule this game after Jeff Collins left? No. This was on the schedule beforehand, as was the Miami game, so that'll be fun. Was it 2 years?
They go to Miami next year.
Next year they go to Miami, and then they come back 2 years after that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a back because next year is Rutgers at home at Miami.
Right. So obviously a lot of talk this week about how do you stay focused? How do you make this just any other game?
And Sean Bradley admitted today that he's had this game circled on his calendar from the jump.
Right. So you had some players kind of letting their guard down a little bit more and saying, yeah, as you said, I've had this game circled on my calendar, and some saying, hey, we just worry about us. We worry about what we do. Rod Carey's not going to say too much about it. A lot of the guys had said today, we focus on us. That's why we say we focus on us. We don't want to get too high or too low. Today, again, we're recording this on a Tuesday. Rod Carey spoke. A handful of his players spoke. One of the things Rod Carey talked about in his media session was just the challenges of facing Georgia Tech and the whole concept of, like, okay, who knows more about the other team now? He said, on one hand, we have film of what those guys did last year, so we know some of their tendencies, but now what they have on their side is, Jeff and his staff recruited some of these guys, not all of them. Sean Bradley was recruited by Matt Rule. Some of these other guys were recruited by Matt Rule, but kind of like the give and take of information. Who knows more? But at the end of the day, once the game kicks off, you can't really over-prepare. You kind of have to execute. So
But
doesn't
that still kind of work both ways? Because, like, you can say, okay, Jeff Collins has a tendency on what Anthony Russo likes to do here.
Sure.
Doesn't Anthony Russo also have a tendency on what Andrew Thacker likes to do in certain scenarios?
Oh, sure,
or Dave
yeah.
Patno likes to do in certain scenarios.
Yeah. Right. So here's Rod Carey talking about that whole dynamic about both sides kind of having information about the other team and what it's ultimately going to mean for the game.
The impact of it is this, is that, okay, we have all of their film from last year. So all the schemes, offense, defense that were executed last year. And so we not only looked at that for this game, but we looked at that in the offseason for the team that we were going to be coaching. And there are certainly some things that we saw in there scheme-wise that we learned and, can put to use in this game plan, okay? They they have the same thing if they went back and looked at Northern, so they have that. But the thing they have that you brought up is they have, player strength and weaknesses that they know from coaching them and recruiting them and seeing them play right now. And I think all of that on both sides is added preparation, right? It's just more knowledge than you have against someone else that you don't have these same ties to. But once the game starts, that preparation needs to take hold. And if you over-analyze and give them too much information, then it's like being prepared for a lot, you're prepared for nothing. Prepared for a little, you're prepared for a lot. So that's kind of how we've approached it, is making sure we're prepared for the things that are really important to that game on Saturday.
All right, so let me ask you guys this. Put on your fortune teller hats for a second. How much of a factor is this going to be? I mean, is this going to be a really unique game we're going to watch because of the knowledge base on both sides with these staffs?
I think if you're going to look at it from an X's and O's standpoint, I don't think it's going to be, oh man, they just keep countering each other because they know everybody's tendencies. I think it's just an interesting game because of the storylines, of the fact that, Jeff Collins, Dave Patnu, Andrew Thacker, Chris Wiesenham, they all chose to leave. They all chose to go to a different program that they deemed was a better fit for them. I think there's emotions that are going to fly high for this. I think that twice in the first 3 games we've seen scenarios where Temple players have been tossed out for targeting, where maybe they not necessarily had hot heads but kind of didn't play within the rules. I'll be curious to see if you see something like that again against Georgia Tech. Is somebody going to get the emotions make the better of them? But no, I don't think it's all of a sudden going to be some chess match any more than a regular football game is.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you're right. I think that based on kind of what Rod Carey was talking about today, both these teams it's a weird circumstance because both teams know a lot more about their opponent than they usually do.
Sure.
It's a different kind of game. You prep a little bit differently. You know a lot more, and it's kind of what do you pick from that and where do you work around it. But I think more than anything, its emotions are going to be running high. That's where this game's going to fall in. These guys are, as you mentioned, the targeting call the last 2 games. These guys are going to be really into it. They're going to be really fired up, whether they want to admit it or not. They don't like the guy that's standing coaching across the field from them. They don't like him. There's bad blood there, and they're going to want to take it to him. I think this game is going to come down to emotions more than anything.
Yeah, and I think it was Sean Bradley. We have Sam Newman's story up on the site right now, and I believe it's Sean Bradley who said, at the end of the day, there's that guy on the other sideline who said he was never going to leave us and he left. So there is going to be, these guys are trained to probably just keep things even keeled and stuff like that, but you're not a human being if you're not up for this game as a player. Speaking of someone who's emotional, Sam Franklin, very good player, versatile linebacker, a guy who's essentially a linebacker hybrid.
Very Sam-centric day.
Yeah, very Sam-centric day. That's a good one. That's very good. Talked to Sam Franklin for a little while after the media scrum kind of dissipated. I got to talk to him a little bit more and asked him about where his head was with this, and seemed pretty composed. But again, we know that he's one of the better players on that defense. He's a single-digit guy. You'll hear him say here in this interview that he's probably going to have to stay in the box a little bit more because of what they do with the quarterback position. They run 2 quarterbacks out there. Both guys can run. And Dave Patnoe is kind of in this first year of transitioning out of an option, wishbone offense into, like Rod Carey said today, whatever a traditional college offense is. So they're running a couple quarterbacks out there that can run. And Sam Franklin, I think, is a guy that we'll have to watch because, again, whether you see him in practice or whether you see him in games, he has a tendency to lose his cool sometimes. He's a very good tackler, very athletic. But I think Sam was holding back a little bit today. Again, I think these guys know that they're not going to put bulletin board material out there so much. But here's Sam Franklin talking about this game, what it means to them, and we'll react to this on the other side.
What went wrong on Saturday?
Energy level wasn't where it needed to be. I feel like we prepared well all week. We just got out-executed, and that's about it. There's no excuses around here. We know that we need to fix some things on defense and on offense to compete a little bit better. That was not the standard that we set for ourselves coming into the week. We practiced well, but we just didn't come in with the right mindset for the game week.
Things changed a little bit after that. You thought you had that fumble return for a touchdown. Was it kind of deflating after that? You kind of just know he was down. What was the mindset?
No, that wasn't really a big deal. We were going to put the ball back down regardless, whether it counted or not, and keep playing ball. But, it just happened not to go our way that day. We had a couple turnovers. We didn't create enough turnovers, and defense didn't play up to par.
how important to turn the page and not let that loss linger with you guys?
It's important to turn the page, but I mean, we're still going to remember everything that happened in that game. We're going to take this as a very good learning experience.
Your thoughts on facing a Jeff Collins coach team this week?
Our focus every week is us. We're focused on us. We're not really worried about the opponent. We have faceless opponents every week, so it's not really who we're playing. It's what we're going to do to win.
Take extra effort to be faceless this week,
I mean, we treat every opponent the same. We don't want to give anybody no extra credit or anything like that.
How much does their offense look like the offense you guys were facing in practice last year?
I mean, it's a little bit different. I mean, they got a little bit different styles of players. You know, with Russo, we had more of a pocket pass. They have more running style quarterback, so they implement a little bit more running into their schemes.
What are that like? How do you do that? Is this a situation where you can't necessarily just pin your ears back, and you, particularly being kind of like a nickel, or you the guy that's might be spying them a little bit more and have a little extra responsibility there?
I mean, it changed up the scheme a little bit. I mean, we got to play a little bit more. We're gonna have to play a little bit more down in the box for me. And then we're going to have to attend to the run a little bit more this week because we know that they have some quarterbacks who can throw. But, I mean, their main goal is to get their athletes in space.
When you are, I know you guys probably get sick this, when you do go up against a coach, is there any danger of being overhyped for the game, pursuing, missing gaps and stuff like that when you
Yes.
stuff for it?
Yes, that is a big problem. I mean, we all have to stay level-headed. That's why we came into the season saying it's about us. We're going to keep it about us. So no matter the opponent, we just got to remember at the end of the day, we're here to get a win.
What did you learn from Saturday? Because I know some people would say, hey, no matter what they say about preparing, looks like they might have overlooked them. What do you take out of Saturday?
Just how you approach the game, like pre-game warm-ups, it was a little dead. And then we tried to cut it on right before game time, and they were already focused on it. So, I mean, I just feel like we need to be more locked in coming into the start, not come out flat and come out with like we're ready to beat any and everybody. Like we're facing Joe Frazier or Mike Tyson every week.
Who do you expect them to throw out there, quarterbacks? They've had a couple guys out there, and they can both run. You kind of just one of those things where you have to be prepared for anybody?
I feel like passing-wise, they're going to probably put 4 in because he's a little bit more of a better passer. And then 8, he's a good runner, but he also can throw a little bit too. So, I mean, they'll probably mix in a little bit of both to try to see which guys are going to be in the groove early. But we just got to stay focused and stay in our jobs.
Do you take anything from last year? You guys start off 0-2, and then you go up and you make a statement. Do you take anything from, I know it's a different team, but do you take anything from last year, the way you guys were able to shrug off the loss and then get back on the
Yeah, just how we bounced back and how we didn't let those 2 losses define us. I think this week we got to know that loss didn't define us. It might have showed us some things that we need to fix, but that's not who we are, and we got to know that.
You want to go over and say hi to Jeff before the game, pre-game?
It's war. It's war every time you step out on that field. So, I mean, afterwards we'll see where it goes. But before the game, I mean, it's not like we don't like the guy or anything. Right. We're here to play ball. But at the end of the day, we came to do a job, and emotions really don't matter at that point.
After the game in the locker room, who were the guys that addressed the team? Like after a win, I know you guys still rally as a team. You listen to music and stuff. After a loss, who's talking to the team?
A little bit of everybody. I mean, the older guys, we try to take over the locker room and bring everybody back and let them know how to recuperate off of the loss. Because, you know, we done took some losses on good winning teams and actually losing teams. So we got to refocus everybody. We got to make sure the young guys stay locked in, stay true to what we set as our end goal at the beginning of the season. So a little bit of everything. The older guys just trying to keep everybody level right now. Not just so much the senior digits, but older guys like Vince Picozzi and guys like that. Just little guys that don't really get to shine. They stepping up this week and holding more people accountable.
Can you still have fun with this though? Can you say, hey, man, we're playing our former coach, we're playing a team from the ACC. It's a chance to, obviously you got to win, but a chance to make a statement. Is there any part of it where you can be like, hey, we're gonna have fun with this too?
Yeah, we're trying to get back to having fun. You know, coming into that game, we're a little bit uptight, I believe, and not really too locked in, but just uptight. Just because like the environment up there, I believe, I mean, it was very stale when you came in. It was kind of like a laid-back town. Wasn't a lot of traffic going to the game. Like a lot of things were different coming from, especially Philly, and having that high motor. Everything's up tempo all the time. So, I mean, it was just a little different experience. At the end of the day, we got to focus on us, and we got to be prepared as players and as coaches.
Is there a little bit, like I noticed like this year, like guys aren't like jumping up and down on the sideline as much. Is that kind of of like by design? Do you still think there's a lot of energy on the sideline, or is it different this year?
It's a lot of energy, but I mean, like last year with Coach Collins, he made that a point of emphasis to always keep the sidelines jumping and had certain guys doing that. But this year, I mean, I feel like we just need to do a better job with that. Everybody has to be engaged in the game. I mean, sometimes I feel like some players aren't as locked in as they are as other players. But I mean, when guys make plays, you hear the sideline, you see the sideline, like it goes crazy. It's just we gotta get that on normal downs when things aren't really happening. And like when we make a tackle for 2 yards, then we gotta still have everybody in the same as we get a TFL on 3rd down or 4th down stop.
Looks like they've had some issues on their offensive line. They've had some injuries there, shuffling guys in and out. Do you see anything you guys can expose there where they've had some issues?
Yes, we do. We see a couple guys that we can take advantage of in the running game and then in the pass game. We're scouting guys really well this week, trying to figure out what our strengths can be, how can we beat guys and things like that. So we got a couple things drawn up, but we're just trying to figure it out still. We're still early in the game plan. We're trying to finalize some things today. I feel like today we got a good look on the runs and all the passes that we should be seeing. But, they're still going to sprinkle some good things out of some new things. So we just got to be prepared.
For you guys as players, is there anything, I mean, like people down there might say, okay, Jeff, you know the tendencies of this team, you recruited some of these guys, you coached them. Is there anything for you as a player where you could say, hey, have this down, some of their tendencies? Is there any, I know it's different players, but is there any advantage there where you can say, hey, we might know what he's thinking of?
Yeah, a little bit, but at the same time, we still got to rely on what we see on tape and what we see out there in the field. But I mean, most of our coaching staff is down there, so we're going to know a couple of things. But like I said, they changed up some things to fit their guys' scheme and to make sure that they play a little bit better. So right now, we're just focused on seeing what we can see and doing what we can do right now.
Cool. All right, so there, I had a chance to talk to Sam about some of the Buffalo stuff, some of the Georgia Tech stuff. He's talking about Tobias Oliver, James Graham, the 2 quarterbacks that they're going to face. We got to see all of maybe the last 10 minutes of practice today toward the end before the media availability. And again, on scout team, they're trying to simulate what Georgia Tech does, just running the ball, being prepared for that. Again, Sam, you hear him talking about how the team's energy level wasn't where it was supposed to be. So we kind of tried to kick it up a notch there at the end. The stadium there at Buffalo is interesting. I mean, the one, I don't know what end of the field it was. All the bleachers were completely empty. But on Buffalo's side, they did have a decent crowd. But again, and I know this might sound kind of hokey to a fan. Yes, going through pregame warm-ups, Buffalo did kind of seem like they were hopping around. They were kind of dialed in. I don't know if that's Sam Franklin's way of saying, like, yeah, we kind of did overlook them a little bit, but they don't appear to be overlooking Georgia Tech. So I guess you can assume that there will be a decent game day atmosphere at the Link this Saturday. Again, it would be nice if the lower bowl was full. We'll see. But again, I think Sam Franklin's going to be a key player in this game. He always is because of his versatility, but now he's going to have to eye up. Again, I don't know if they'll actually have him spying these quarterbacks, but he'll be an interesting guy to watch during the game, not only just for his versatility, but he's very talented, but you hope that him or someone like Sean Bradley, if you're Temple, doesn't get called for a late hit or a targeting penalty. You'll hear Rod Carey talk, if you just listen to the entire length of his comments from today. He was asked about the targeting call, and he said, Sean should kind of know better. I was kind of a bang play on one hand. I didn't like it because it's a tough football play, but then Sean knows he put himself in a bad spot. There could be a couple more of those moments this week. Because, again, these guys can say whatever they want to say, but they're football players. They're tough. They're emotional. They'll want to make an impact. They'll want to hit a quarterback. They'll want to force some sort of turnover. But I think just staying composed is going to be a big thing for them.
Agreed.
I think it's definitely the kind of thing where Carey's going to say to these guys, like, listen, I know the circumstances. I know what we're about to get into. Right. Take it to them, but don't let your emotions get the best of you. I think that's he's gonna give them that, like, that one-hitter, one-liner, one quote where it's like, really take it to these guys, but at the same time, he's going to be like, just play football, be smart, don't do anything stupid, because at the end of the day, we're here to win a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Temple's emotions were probably going to be high, even if they were playing, if they were playing the Citadel. Mm-hmm. After the way they lost to Buffalo, I think they were kind of going to want to bounce back with hey, we were kind of not national darlings, but a little bit of national darlings the week before, and then now nobody cares about us. So I think it says the chance to kind of get out of hand in a good way, and I'll be curious to see how they respond. I expect them to come out fast.
I don't know if you guys saw Delvon Randall's tweet. He said, we're trying to go 1-0. You guys know what it is. We're going 1-0. When he tagged a bunch of his teammates. Like, that's the mindset. They're on to the next. You forget about it and you move on.
That's all. The foundation of Matt Rule and Jeff Collins and want to go and 1-0 every week.
Yeah,
and-
I mean that's every coach in America.
Oh yeah.
But former Temple star Bernard Pierce was going to war on Instagram in comment sections.
Really?
About being like, hey, it's just one loss, they'll bounce back. Don't worry about this. People were like, yo, no crap. He's like, I mean, I'm like, they advertised me hunting for the Heisman. Like,
Yep.
I used to play the program.
This Georgia Tech team, so like just to give a quick recap of what they've done so far this season, lost 52-14 to Georgia Tech, lost 52-14 to Clemson in the opener, top-ranked team in the country.
Here, real quick before we get to that, I saw this as like I think it was a trash talking thing, either on Reddit or somebody's message board or something. This is a complete 180, but I kind of just want to gauge. Could an all-star team of the American Athletic Conference, so the all-American Athletic Conference, defense and offense, first and second team, beat Clemson?
Yes, absolutely.
I think I agree, but I'm not positive.
It's
I said that
closer
without
of a
giving
game
a
than it
lot
should
of deep
be.
thought.
It's a lot closer of a game than
I
it
think
should
Sam's.
be.
Yeah, I mean, well, do we delve into this for
Sure,
a
I can
second?
dive into it a little bit. I mean, I don't need like player names, but just like what would be like your knee-jerk reaction to that? I would think that Temple would have. I'm not Temple. I think the American would have trouble passing the ball and stopping their pass. Like Trevor Lawrence, I think might be able to. I think there'd be a big difference between cornerbacks and wide receivers there.
Rock Yassin's on that team.
No, like from last year, sure, we'll do last year. I was talking about like this year, like at the end of the year. Not of
Oh,
all
you're talking.
time.
Oh, you're not.
No,
Oh, I
no,
thought
no,
you
Not the
were
all-
talking
yeah, not the all-time team.
All time.
No, just like a single season Clemson team versus
Oh,
a single
the all-
season.
I would hope the all-time team would win.
Oh no, that changes things for
No,
me.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure, man.
Yeah.
I think Clemson wins that game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there'd just be like a certain aspect.
I thought you meant an all-time.
I think
team.
Dabo would be able to figure out eventually, like, hey, this is where we have a distinct advantage, and they would just abuse it.
Oh, I thought you meant an all-time team. I'm thinking like, okay,
No.
let's.
Yeah, because then you're going up against Mike Hughes and Rock Ya-Sin, and you're getting like first and second round picks and stuff like that. No, a single season.
getting Derek King, whatever he decides to come back.
He's gonna look great in Oklahoma next year.
Yeah,
when
that's
he
a
wins
weird.
a
That's
Heisman.
a weird story. Anyway, interesting question though. So Georgia Tech loses to Clemson 52-14 their opener. They beat a not so great USF team 14-10. Lost to the Citadel 27-24. Now they've been on a bye, so they have a week to rest and prepare.
Mm-hmm.
They've had some injuries on their offensive line. What's the biggest challenge for Temple this week, just X's and O's wise? Is it just preparing for just what they might see at quarterback, and just in terms of having to defend some running quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to force me to point, like, hey, what's the biggest challenge? I would say, yeah, the fact that you're going to deal with two quarterbacks, if not three. I mean, it says here in our notes, I don't know if this was Sam getting it wrong or you getting it wrong. Not Sam Newman, not Sam Cohen, but Sam Franklin. James Graham's not really the throwing quarterback, right? It's Lucas Johnson is their throwing
believe so,
quarterback.
yeah.
Yeah, Lucas Johnson's the one that really kind of airs it out for them. Tobias Oliver is more of a mobile threat, but Johnson can run a little bit. I think it's just going to be smart with the senior leaders on that team have to know, hey, it's this guy, hey, it's that guy. I don't know. I haven't watched a crap ton of Georgia Tech film. I don't know if they're moving them in, if they're doing drive-by-drive, or if they're literally doing like play-by-play. This is a Lucas play. This is a Tobias play. But I think if the biggest wrinkle in preparation, I think would be that. That being said, I mean, neither of them could throw that well. Like, they're both quarterbacks that were recruited to Georgia Tech. There's a reason they were quarterbacks recruited to Georgia Tech. But neither of them are exactly deep threats.
So one thing Georgia Tech does have going for itself is a pretty good secondary. They are seventh in the nation in power. Sorry, sixth in the nation in passing defense. Again, it's early. They've only allowed 420 yards. Now, granted, one of their games was against Citadel. They run the ball a lot, so they don't throw it a lot. So the numbers are a bit skewed there. We're sitting here right now looking at Jeff Collins' above the line chart, which we enjoyed looking at for the past two seasons. So again, if you're a Temple fan, you know what this is about. Jeff doesn't really have necessarily a true depth chart. He just talks about players who are above the line. So everybody who's figured to get into the mix in the game here. Again, he calls his defense a 4-2-5 effort-based defense, but they've got some good safety, some good corners. Again, they've been playing well so far there. I think if your Temple sounds basic, they need to. I mean, they had, Ramon Davis had a good run on Saturday, but again, they had to play from behind. They really couldn't.
Sure.
Their rushing totals were skewed because of the lost yardage on the
yeah.
punt and the sacks to Russo. But they have to, I would imagine that you got to reestablish the run there, get Davis involved, get Jagger Gardner involved, make sure Jagger Gardner doesn't fumble the ball, just to kind of wear them out a little bit. And I'm sure Anthony Russo will try to take his shots, but he's doing so against a pretty good secondary.
Right.
you think his picks were just a result this past Saturday of just trying to win the game on his own and just trying to force things or press things again? I mean, he threw picks last year. It's something he has to eradicate. Do you think that was more in character or of him, is still indicative of some of the same things, or is he just trying too hard last week?
Both. I mean, I think a lot of it is, like you say, he is a interception maven. No, he has a tendency to throw picks.
Yeah.
He led the conference in interceptions last year. He had one against Buffalo, one against Bucknell, one against Maryland.
Pick 6.
Yeah,
he has 2 pick 6 now.
Right. Even Maryland last year, he threw a pick 6 against Maryland
Right.
last year. That kind of almost got Maryland back in the game. He has a tendency to do that. That being said, I think it was pretty obvious in the second half that he's definitely trying to win it all at once. I think that if you look at it as, well, what's the next step in Anthony Russo's progressions? Because I think we'll get into this a little bit in the mailbag. I think it's important to remember that he's on pace for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns.
Right.
So like he's by no means having this terrible season. He had a bad game against Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step in his progression is ball security.
Mm-hmm. And this is also a Georgia Tech team. Again, it's only been 3 games. They haven't generated a ton of pressure on defense. They have 4 sacks as a team. Charlie Thomas has 2. David Curry has 1. More so, again, that the strength of their defense has been the secondary. Again, there could be some familiarity there. We'll see if they're doing some of the same things that, Andrew Thacker's their defensive coordinator, but we kind of know that for the most part, unless things have really changed, it's Jeff Collins run the show in this effort-based defense. Basic question, but before we get to predictions here, what do they have to do? What are some of the keys to the game here?
I always feel bad because it almost sounds like a cop-out because it's almost usually the same thing every week, right? I think you have to establish the run. I think Ramon Davis is averaging 6.8 yards a carry, which if you come into the season, you'd said true freshman is going to average close to 7 yards a carry, you would have been ecstatic. And I think they have to protect the ball, right?
Yeah.
Even for as terrible as they played against Buffalo, and they played awful. They played a terrible game. If you take back one of those interceptions or Russo's fumble or the bad snap, Temple probably wins that game, or at least has a chance to win that game in the end. And instead it ends up being, you lost 16 points to a mediocre MAC team on the road. So I think it's the same. I think you're going to have to feed Ramon. You have to feed Jagger. I wonder if Kerry's right and he does want somebody like Kyle Dobbins to kind of get in there too. And I think they're going to have to protect the ball. I mean, like I said before, with the obvious caveat that they played the Citadel, Georgia Tech's number 6 in the nation in passing yards allowed. They don't allow that many passing yards. They're bad on third down defense. They're bad on fourth down defense. They're bad on third down offense. They're bad on fourth down offense. I think you really just kind of have to play to your strength or just play to a very basic game plan in this, and you should be Georgia Tech.
Sam?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you just said, but the one major thing that kind of stands out to me in this game is Anthony Russo has to have a good game. I think there's not a lot of kind of back and forth about how I think this defense will play. I think they'll really step up to the challenge, especially at home, especially with all the storylines surrounding this game. It comes down to if Anthony Russo can have a good game, I think this Temple team plays really well, and they'll kind of build behind that.
Go to predictions, then we'll talk a little bit about this whole concept of Rod Carey withholding his players on Saturday.
Sure. I'll say this. I'm not worried about Georgia Tech's offense. Even with 2 quarterbacks and ACC level talent and this and that, I'm not worried about that. The numbers don't back it up. The film doesn't back it up. They are not a good offensive team at this point.
Right.
And it makes sense. They were all recruited to run the triple option. Now you're coming in. They still run the ball a lot. Like, this isn't a Dave Patton offense where they're throwing the ball 45 times a game. They're still running the ball like 60, 65% of the time. It's just different. It's a lot of different looks. They have a good defense. I don't think that Temple's going to put 40 points in this game or anything like that, especially considering that they struggled against Buffalo team. I just think in the end, though, there's going to be enough willpower, enough difference that there are different points in their program right now. I'll say Temple wins this game to get to 3-1. I'll say they win 28-13.
Sam?
I really thought he was going to steal my prediction there. I'm going to go Temple 28-24. I think it's going to be a little bit closer.
At Temple 27-17. I think the defense really locks in. I think they will be, as you said, this isn't a game where, if they really come out firing on all cylinders on offense, Ramon Davis gets it going again, the line plays well, protects Russo, and Russo doesn't make any mistakes, and they do end up putting 30-plus points on this defense, I think that's a really, really good sign.
And I think that's a very comfortable win. If you can tell me right now they put up 30 points on this defense, I think they can win this game soundly.
Yeah. I'm thinking more a 27-20 game. in this one. So
I think
see.
you changed your prediction within the actual prediction. You
What
went
did I
from
say,
27-17 to 27-20. Like, yeah, guess what? 3-point
I
swing.
didn't say, you didn't hear that.
27-20.
They're going to get a field goal in the
27-24.
fourth quarter and bring it to 20.
Whatever you heard. Yeah. Where should I go? 27-17? Stick with the first
Stick with
one?
your gut. Yeah.
27-17.
Love the one you love. Love the one you're with.
Yeah, exactly. Great song. So before we go on to just a quick basketball recruiting update and then into the mailbag, we'll talk a little bit about this whole thing, which has blown over, especially I think in a pro sports town. We've talked about this for a couple of days. Temple loses to Buffalo, as we said on Saturday. Rod Carey comes down, and as we got there, to provide a little bit of context here, we get to the makeshift visiting media area. As soon as we got down there, Rod Carey was down there, and I still like Rod. I think he is. It's been said a million times. I think he is a pretty straightforward meat and potatoes type of guy. I think if Rod had his druthers, they play the game. He'd answer a few questions, get out of there. The game's about the players and the coaches and the fans, and you move on from things. We get down there. Rod talks to us for a little less than or a little more than 5 minutes. He leaves. Rich Berg comes out and says, "Hey guys, my apologies here. There aren't going to be players made available." Rod is going to come out after he takes a shower and answers some more questions, but players are not going to be made available. So we all kind of rolled our eyes, not necessarily Rich, but you drive 6.5 hours up to Buffalo to cover a game. And to Rod's credit, he talked about this today, but players were not made available. Rod Carey comes back after about 15 minutes or so. Mark Narducci was the first to ask him, "Hey, why no players?" He said, "I just, I forget what the exact quote is, but he said, I just wanted to protect these guys." I'll ask you your thoughts on this, Sam. Your thoughts on this, and again, he talked more about it. We're gonna play. I'll tell you what. We'll play the clip of him talking about it today because he was asked about it today by Mike Jensen from the Philadelphia Inquirer, who came in. I think a bunch of people would have asked him about it. Anthony Russo did talk about it today. He was asked about it. He said, "We kind of appreciated it. I was good either way. I would have talked, but he wanted to wrap his arms around us and protect us, which I appreciated." But here's what Rod Carey said about it today, a couple days after, and then we'll react to this and talk about this a little bit.
Well, it was really, it was really simple, and it's just over. It's really simple for me, and so I'll oversimplify it again. Is that they were hurting, and they were upset, and my job as a coach is to protect them. So I chose at that moment to go ahead and say, "Hey, let's hold off until Tuesday and have them talk." Give them some space away from that performance. It's hard going out and playing a game and losing like that. That was the simple reason on the thing. You guys may not agree with it. You may not like it. And I have sympathy. A lot of you guys traveled up there and then didn't get to meet with the players. And I know that's hard on you guys too. So believe me, it's not going to be something I do every time. But it is my job to go ahead and protect them in that situation. And so I chose to do that.
The message is Temple tough. Is that Temple tough not talking about?
Well, I think that's your opinion. I don't think that talking or not talking has anything to do with tough, in my opinion.
All right, so your thoughts on this? Your thoughts on Rod not having players talk? And he said this isn't going to be an every week thing. Just wanted to protect the guys. What do you think about this?
I think I put this in the text messages in our group chat. I think I said a very, very small part of me gets it. Mm-hmm. Like a very, very small part of me. Like obviously, I can only view things from my perspective. I can only view things from my background, from where I am in my life, and I view this as what the hell. Like John, Graham, Don, and a bunch of other people like drove up 6.5 hours and they're not getting crap. If I try to take a balcony perspective from this, and I try to see kind of like the bigger picture in this,
like one of the guys from the Muppets.
Yeah, one of the crush Yeoman just screaming from the balcony.
Yeah.
I kind of get it. Like Rod Carey doesn't owe anything to the media.
Right.
Like end of the day, his job is not to talk to the media. It's not like that's part of it. It's not to give the media access to all of this. Jeff Collins was great at that. Jeff Collins gave you a lot of access to everything. Didn't help him win any more games.
Right.
He didn't win any more games because he was a media darling. I think Rod Carey's ultimate responsibility, at least in his mind, is to protect his players, and he thought that was the case. I think you see Anthony Russo talk about that when he says, "Hey, like we kind of appreciate it," because they probably are a little hurt. They probably were a little upset in that locker room. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily buy into the value that where people were saying like, "Oh yeah, how's this team supposed to be tough when they can't even talk to the media?" Like, I don't care about that part. Like they're kids. I get that. I think it was a mistake. I think he should let the players talk. But like I can see where at that moment why he would think that.
Sam, what do you think of this?
My initial reaction was felt very unprofessional. on Rod Carey's part. After having a couple days to digest it, I think there's two sides to the coin. One being he can protect his players. He can let these guys kind of soak in and make them internally digest that loss and make them think about it with each other rather than having to go out and talk about it. The other is these guys are young men. You have them face, the product that happened on the field, they put that out. That was not entirely on Rod Carey. It was a good portion of it was on Rod Carey, but these players went out on that field and played the way they did, and they didn't play that well. As a young man growing up and you're playing a Division I sport, you should be able to face the things that you've done wrong and own up to what you did wrong. Whether, I do understand that he's saying, I want to protect these young men. They need some time to do it, whatever. Personally, I think that he should have his players say, listen, we messed up today and we own up to that. And this, don't make everybody available. Don't make them talk a little less. Say, you give them a couple questions and make them go. But
what you would normally see in that scenario, I think, with discounting Collins, but looking like Rule or Golden Adazio, if a situation like that happened, I think what you normally would see is you would have saw Anthony Russo, Sean Bradley, and one other person. You would have seen the hand-picked, these are the guys that we know aren't going to say something stupid, and that'd be that. But
there's a middle ground there he could have found. I don't think he had to go entirely and say.
I mean, I think a lot of it is, and by no means am I trying to bail out Rod Carey. He's a grown man; he can live with his own actions. I think part of it is also it was still fresh to Rod Carey. He made a decision reactionary. It's not like he thought going to that game, well, if we lose by 16, I'm not going to let them do this. I think he just reacted and said no, I just saw blah 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 cry or blah 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 drop the F-bomb on an athletic trainer. I don't want to put them in front of the media.
He did. Now, we talked about this before. And he talked to Harry Mays this week about this on Harry Mays' ESPN show, and I'd heard that he has done this before at Northern Illinois, and I'm not surprised. I agree with you guys. There are two sides to it. On one hand, it's a good look for a coach if he says, I want to wrap my arms around these guys and support them. And I've probably said this to you a million times between Saturday and today. I'm certainly not trying to overvalue what we do. I don't think any of us are we're super important beat reporters. We're we know everything and you know nothing.
I didn't even go. That's how
right.
That's the insignificance of us. I didn't even go.
Well,
I went to a wedding.
You had a wedding to go to, but
prime rib.
And this will, like I said, this will blow over. The only way this will not blow over now, it's going to be again. We're recording this on a Tuesday. This is going to be, if it's not on the Inquirer's website already, Mike Jensen. This is the downside of it. And again, this blows over. You attract attention that you don't want.
Sure.
You kind of look, and again, I'm sure there's some fans will say, why is the media perpetuating this? It's over, it's done with. Now, I like Mike Jensen a lot. Mike Jensen, you heard that exchange there, and I thought you couldn't really hear Mike too well, but Mike's follow-up question was, and I agree with you, I think you said this earlier, Mike asked the question, he said, I'm still trying to figure out the logic behind not having the players talk. Rod talks about it. I do appreciate the fact that for whatever it's worth, they said, hey, I get it. You guys made the trip up, and that was unfortunate for you. So I at least I can appreciate that. And to say, before I move on, Rod wasn't confrontational about any of this. He didn't say, you guys in the media twist things, that blah, blah, blah. He wasn't like that. He was pretty cool, calm, and collected. He came out the second time, talked about it, and as he was walking off, he's walking out the door to get back on the plane, said, hey, guys, appreciate you understanding. I think he was clumsy about it at first. He's like, well, there's a tight window, the plane. I was cringing as he said that. I was like, come on, dude, you're not going to miss your charter is going to wait for you. You're not going to miss your charter flight because Anthony Russo answered one extra
You
question.
and I covered a game in Nashville against Vanderbilt where the game didn't end until 2 a.m. and they did, and players had class at 8 a.m. Guess what? The plane waited for him.
Yeah, that's what charters do.
Yeah,
I'm glad Jensen asked that question though. I think Rod Carey could handle it well, but I think back to the first thing I learned in any of my journalism class, which is you hold your leaders accountable. You got to ask the question. You got to get into what he's thinking.
Yeah, I think it was a very fair exchange on both sides.
It seemed a little intense, and there was a little bit of that little thick air in the room when he asked it. But
yeah, and then it eventually dissipated. Again, Again, there are some Temple fans who get agitated by anything that the Inquirer writes, anything that Mike Jensen writes. I will say this till the cows come home. Mike does not have an agenda. Mike, I think, wrote a fairly critical piece about how some Villanova fans weren't thrilled with the renovations at the pavilion over at Villanova. Mike does not care. He actually, speaking of Vanderbilt, went to Vanderbilt. Doesn't have an axe to grind with Temple. Has every right to show up and ask about that. Someone else would have asked about it. I just hope for Rod's sake, and again, it doesn't really have... Well, it'll affect us. I'll tell you how it will affect us, because Mike said this. He's like, what if, and we were talking about this before the press conference. He said, well, in our business at the Inquirer, hopefully he doesn't do this. He goes, well, what if we send Mark Narducci down on Thursday at ECU, and then he does this again, and then he doesn't talk. Well, we just wasted resources, and you don't want to. I think that could be, again, I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I like the fact that Rod acknowledged, hey, you guys made the trip. I just don't think it's something that he should make a habit of, because, again, you're going to continue to attract negative press. Again, it will by no means will it dominate the headlines. We're in a pro sports city. Everybody's concerned about the Eagles being 1-2, soon to be 1-3 probably if they don't beat the Packers. Oh, you look like you're a believer. You think they're going to win?
Hey, you never. I was talking to Graham beforehand. I think they always win a game. You never expect them to win.
Could
Maybe
be.
It's this one.
Could be. But
Probably not.
I just think that the one thing that kind of makes me cringe is I want to protect my players. I mean, I get that, but protect them from what? I think they get a pretty fair shake from the media in this town. Again, they are not the lead story.
Honestly, to be honest, I don't think it was, and I don't think I was taking it as protecting from the media. I think it was like protecting from themselves.
Right.
The last thing you want is somebody to go out there and be like, well, we're like, they just self-pity.
But I get that, but when has that ever happened? When in the history of covering this program, we've been covering for a while, do you remember a player coming out and saying something so egregiously stupid where it became board
everything
material?
Robbie Henderson ever said.
I don't even think Robbie said it. Was more the funny stuff came from Matt Brown.
Oh,
he was like, "Yeah, we're glad to be out of the MAC.
Yeah,
we're glad to be in the Big East."
Mac Brown once straight told me the only reason he reached out to Temple is because they were so awful that he figured even he could play there.
Right. But with the exception of that, this is not a program that that has had issues with players like saying tough stuff, and they've lost a lot of tough games.
Right.
Nobody really said anything after they blew a game against Fordham and Joe Moorhead in that game.
Right.
Nobody really said anything stupid after they lost the Blake Bortles UCF game. Even in the I mean, again, I've talked to you about this. No one's really going to care, but back in 2008, they go to Buffalo and lose a really tough game there. A game where the ball's coming down, that Hail Mary play. I'm sure Jaquan Jarrett and Jamal Schulters and all these guys didn't want to talk, but they did. I don't really know what you're teaching them. Again, I think all the players are probably like, yeah, we appreciate it. We could have talked either way. I just hope for his sake he doesn't make a habit of it, because if he does, then it will become a story. It's going to be a story this week, and people will talk about it. But
see, I also just don't know. Like, I don't pay attention enough to like what does Mendenhall do down at like Virginia?
Right.
What does Narduzzi do at Pitt? Like,
well, you do know what Narduzzi and Narduzzi
he doesn't
got
let them
ripped.
talk at all.
He didn't
during
let them
Penn
talk
State
up at leading up to the Penn State
So,
game,
like,
and he got ripped for it. Again, they live to fight another day. The stuff
Right.
blows over.
I mean,
I'm not trying to make it more than it is.
College football, college basketball, there are weird enterprises where you're literally saying this one guy is going to sculpt everything. He's going to sculpt our culture, he's going to offense, our defense, every aspect. He is basically the czar of this. Like it or leave it. If they go out and they win 38-10 against Georgia Tech, we'll never speak about this
exactly.
again.
Unless he does it again.
But then they'll win 38-10 again, and we won't speak about it.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the mailbag. We have dissected this football team. Before we get to the mailbag, a couple quick updates or non-updates. We've mentioned Temple basketball recruiting. Nothing new with Obina and Achille Keelan, a big man they're keeping their eye on. He had offers from VCU, got an offer from Cincinnati. Temple's still trying to recruit him. Again, they only have one player committed from the 2020 class. That is Jaleel White from Wildwood Catholic. A couple sources I talked to last week, and I think I mentioned this in last week's podcast, told me that Temple was hoping to get Tristan Maxwell, the son of Vernon Maxwell, former Sixer, former Rocket, in for an official visit. He's supposed to be a very good shooter from down in North Carolina. Unless something has changed, he doesn't have a Temple official set up yet. Does have, ironically enough, an official set up at Georgia Tech for this weekend, and then another official visit set up at North Carolina State from October 9th to the 11th.
I think Josh Pastner still has a flip phone. When he was at Memphis, that was the whole thing, is he had a flip phone. So then he goes to Georgia Tech, and they give him a company-issue phone. Do you think he asked for a flip
You remember
phone?
that whole thing that Nick Menta looked into where he said, like, my grandfather
He claimed
was
that
up
his
in the
grandfather died in the stands of the vet, and Nick looked into it and was like, this is just not accurate. There's
weird guy.
There was no game that day.
Weird guy. So that's about all on the Temple basketball recruiting front. Let's get to the mailbag here. Some questions on Twitter, some questions on the mailbag here. Sam, this is your exposure to the OwlScoop mailbag. You're going to see some screen names here.
Okay.
I get a kick out of them from screen names from message board, and, of course, some questions from Twitter. First one comes from Park Owl from the message board here. It says, Anthony Russo is 111th out of 127 FBS quarterbacks in total QB rating this year and has shown little to no improvement in the areas that hurt him last year. Is he really the quarterback that gives Temple the best chance to win every week? If so, what does that say about the recruiting/coaching of QBs at Temple over the past 4 years?
Please stop putting value in ESPN's QBR stat.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
In 2015, QBR had Ryan Fitzpatrick as a better quarterback than Tom Brady.
Right. So, I mean, Sam, what do you think of this?
I think it's, as of like looking at how he's played this season, I think it's too early to say. I actually just had this conversation the other day with a couple people at WHIP about like looking forward, is Anthony Russo the guy? Is he the one you go with? And he had a really strong outing in his first game. He had a solid outing in his second game. He had a really bad outing in his third game. You need to be. At the end of the day, I think you need a little bit bigger of a sample size. I think how does he bounce back from a bad game? This game is huge for him because, again, he played well. He played all right. And in the third game, he just didn't play well. He had a bad day. The whole team didn't play well. So how does he overcome adversity? He knows, and it's good to hear that he knows there are things he needs to improve on. After the first game and after the second game, he said, yeah, I did all right, but like I need to do this. I need to do X, Y, and Z. He needs to work on his reads. He has some communication issues, a lot of little things. So when he has a bad game, how does he take that and turn it into the next week?
Yeah, I completely agree that this is a huge game for them. I think in the end, you're still looking at somebody, like I said earlier, that's on pace for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, which would both shatter Temple records. And more importantly, you're looking at somebody that's 9-4 all time as starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Temple.
I'm not going up to Toddy Centeo and saying, go get in the bullpen because you're up soon. Like, I'm not
no, he
crazy
gives
yet.
you some elements, but I mean, let's look at the numbers. Russo's, go ahead.
The last time he had a game this bad was Cincinnati last year, which they won, but he threw 3 picks. He just looked out of sync the whole time. They kind of got it together in fourth quarter and overtime, but he looked bad the entire time. The next week, he goes on national television and goes punch for punch for UCF and looks
Mackenzie
dominant.
Milton, yeah.
He rushes 2 touchdowns. Or 1 touchdown, but he threw for 4. He looked dominant against Mackenzie Milton.
Yeah, the QB rating numbers are.
I had a conclusion to that point, but that's fine.
Oh, I thought you were done.
No, it's
go
okay.
Ahead, please go ahead.
I'm just saying,
Speak
in the
into
past, in his one sample size of a very bad game, he has bounced back the next week. He threw for 444 yards against UCF. So you wonder if going up against Georgia Tech, if he does bounce back from this, if all of a sudden he goes against Georgia Tech and he throws 3 or 4 picks and he looks lost and he fumbles the ball and all that, then okay, maybe you have a discussion. But right now, the guy's 2-1 as a starter this season. He's 9-4 as a starter in his career. I'm not quick to go to the bullpen yet either.
Maybe his kryptonite is he gets too confident and he goes in and he has a bad game against a team he thinks he should throw 4 touchdowns and 400 yards on and then doesn't, and then he kind of has a humbling game and then he bounces back from it.
Yeah. That would have to be the hope if you're
humble
Russo,
pie.
If you're Russo and the staff and a Temple fan. I mean, you look at his numbers. He's completed nearly 60% of his passes, 944 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He's averaging close to 315 passing yards per game. As you said, he's on pace for record-breaking numbers. The most interesting thing here is probably the psychological piece of it. He wants to bounce back. But he's trying to bounce back against a coach that saw him in great detail for 2 years. A coach and a coordinator. Again, not the guys that recruited him. Marcus Satterfield and Matt Rule recruited him, but if he can go out and lead them to a win and put up respectable to good numbers, I think it's an extra notch in your belt that you did it against a guy that has serious intel on you, and I think that could be a huge confidence booster for him. So I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. I get that the interceptions are frustrating. I get that the pick sixes are frustrating, but I also think, again, not to say that it was the right approach, but he's pressing. They're playing from behind. They had to throw a ton. He did not have the benefit of great protection, and Isaac Moore could have played better.
And we'll get into that. I think that's a question coming up. But you know what the encouraging part to me is? After he throws that pick 6, he throws a touchdown the next drive. Right after that, next drive, he scores a touchdown. He threw two touchdowns in the fourth quarter after throwing a pick 6.
The pick 6 to me.
So I don't think confidence is an issue.
No, I don't think confidence is an issue at all. To me, the pick 6 wasn't the most disappointing pick of the day. The one was the one he threw. They come out firing in the second half. He gets the deep ball to Jaden Blue, and he tries going back to him, and it was way off. I mean, he threw like 3 or 4 yards too far ahead of him, and it just that to me was one of the key turning points in the game. They had a chance to build some momentum there, and that was just, I think, kind of a crippling moment. I agree. Confidence is not his problem. We'll try to.
I was drinking hors d'oeuvres, or I was eating hors d'oeuvres by that point. So I'll take
bacon wrap scallops.
Didn't see any bacon wrap scallops. They had little like starter plates, like little like. I think there was a lot of like shrimp and a lot of crustaceans.
Good,
yeah,
good stuff.
Delicious.
Sam, favorite wedding appetizer?
Wow. I've only been to like 2 weddings.
Oh, he's young. He's got
so
a lot of wedding
I don't have a lot of
ahead.
experience in wedding appetizers or hors d'oeuvres,
but party hors d'oeuvre, I guess to say.
Wow. Party hors d'oeuvre. I mean, I just go with classic like nachos or like chip salsa or like potato skins or something along those lines.
Potato skins.
That's fine.
There we go.
They had the wedding had little like individual pizzas.
Can I give you the best wedding meal I've ever had?
Yes, please.
Venison hash.
Huh.
And it was my cousin's wedding, and the groom killed the deer himself the week before and skinned the deer. And then
You're putting a lot of faith in yourself.
Man.
You're that guy though. What if you didn't kill a deer that year? Crap! I based my entire
Just talking
wedding.
about venison hash and a guy. I mean, like we're not related to this guy, but I feel like we just got a little stronger as a podcast. Just thinking about
You know what I hate about weddings, and I do this every time: filet mignons at weddings, because they're never. This is the first wedding I've ever been
I
at.
had a
with
fear that you were gonna look at me and be like, you know what I hated about your
commitment.
wedding?
No, like most time you order like a steak or filet mignon in a wedding, and they're just mass produced. So like you're not gonna get exactly to like the level you want. This was the first wedding I was at where I asked for medium rare and it actually came out medium rare.
You said that the other day, right?
Yeah, I'd say that.
we get the invitation to chicken or fish.
So
What do you check
normally,
off?
right? Normally you would check that.
Yeah.
This didn't have them. This was they took your order at when you got to the table.
Okay.
Which tells me that then they were actually cooking them to order instead of being like, oh, we need 85 filet mignons, throw them all on there, and then warming it up.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, what the other wedding I went to, I guess both weddings were a little unconventional, but they had pizza for the hors d'oeuvres, and it was all like brick oven pizza from the guy's friend who had like brought his little truck.
Killed
and
the
there you
oven
go.
the week before.
Next question. Good stuff there. Good wedding talk. Next question comes from Esther Boyer from the message board. What happened to the usual PA announcer of football games? Will he be back for basketball? I honestly do not know. Don't know what the deal is there. We'll try to find out for you. Can't even fake a response to that question. Could not tell you. Good question. We'll try to find out.
We don't
for
hear
you.
the PA announcer. I think somebody had mentioned this to me, but I would never know.
We are the press box spotter inside. We don't hear the the PA announcer outside. Try to find out for you. Next question comes from Philly Owl. Is Lynn Greer III still taking his official visit this weekend? To catch up on this, in case you've missed this, Lynn Greer III, the son of Lynn Greer II, the former Temple star. Lynn Greer III is at Roman Catholic as of a few weeks ago. Said he was going to take an official visit to Temple this weekend, and then last week, or about 10 days ago or so, decides he's going to reclassify to 2021. When I checked on this last week, I'd heard as of now he's still taking his official visit. Of course, he has a lot of recruiting still left ahead of him. That's why you reclassify. As of now, I think he is, but people hate hearing this. This stuff's fluid. Stay tuned. We shall see what happens there. Next question from Twitter from @DrDrew. Last spread I saw had Temple as a 9.5-point favorite over Georgia Tech. How on earth is that possible after how bad Temple looked last Saturday? Is Georgia Tech really that bad? Thinking about putting my life savings on GT covering.
The last
We
question
preface
there.
this by saying, what do you always say? We do not give gambling advice on the scoop.
I give gambling advice on the scoop now. It's
What is
legal
your
in Pennsylvania.
disclaimer?
I by my own morals, I don't bet on Temple games.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Which is true. I've never bet on a Temple game.
No, you're not Pete Rose.
I'm not. I am. I had a very good weekend. I think Georgia Tech's really that bad. I think the line is kind of telling of that. That you go from being a 14-point favorite on the road, so that would have been like 17 points on a neutral field, to now you're 9.5 on home, so that'd be like 6.5 on a neutral field. I think Georgia Tech's that bad. I don't know if I'd go anywhere near this line. I don't think I'd touch it, but no, I think Georgia Tech might.
I would not either, and I am the furthest thing from an experience.
Because like even removing the Citadel game, they didn't look great against USF, and then USF is terrible this year. They're an awful team this year, and they didn't look great against that. They kind of came out hot against Clemson, and then got abused by Clemson, which most people are going to be. But no, I wouldn't go anywhere near this line.
Technically, I'm not allowed to gamble, but hypothetically,
If you did.
I would not touch this line with a 10-foot pole.
No.
9.5 is a lot.
Yeah. Yes, 9.5. So yeah, I mean, like John just predicted 27.
Of course, hypothetical.
Yeah, you just predicted 27-20. That'd be a good win. They'd win by 7 points against their former team. They wouldn't cover. I wouldn't go anywhere near the line.
yeah. And
That being said, I took Boston College minus 9.5 against Rutgers, I believe, so that all worked out fine.
Yeah, I think the one thing you're concerned about, maybe not the one. There are two things for me that would concern me. Again, trying to stop any mobile quarterback is tough. Trying to stop two mobile quarterbacks could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's three things. It's the keeping track of the quarterbacks, the knowledge base that Jeff Collins and his staff have, and the secondary. But again, these guys in Vegas are pretty good at what they do, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
shockingly good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they based their entire industry around it.
So I don't think the line is shocking. I think Dr. Drew here is a understandably frustrated Temple fan. Dr. Drew. I'll ask him where he went to medical school. He's a good follow on Twitter. Next question comes from RGD5759 from the Temple basketball message board on our site. Did Jake Forrester receive a waiver for this year, or is he sitting out? Still to be determined. As I was told recently, again, Jake Forrester is the former Westtown star, transferred after a season to Indiana. unless something has changed, I'm pretty sure Ty Strickland is going to sit out this year, the Wisconsin transfer, the son of Rod Strickland, former NBA star. As for Jake, I don't quite know where that stands yet. I don't have a strong feeling on it either way. I don't think anything as of today is official. Obviously, we'll follow up on that. Start of the season's getting closer. They had their first full team practice of the preseason today, but I don't think there's any definitive word on that just yet. Next question from Twitter, at Matt Deebs. How do you think the O-line has performed to date? Russo seemed to be rushed all game Saturday. Also wondering if you've already laid out your performance vest and capri pants for Jeff with
Jeff with a G.
With Jeff with a G's triumphant return.
I don't want to pinpoint one kid, but I'm going to pinpoint one kid. I think Isaac Moore is really not taking that next step. I think he looked awful against Buffalo. I think if you look at kind of like the analytics, the interior offensive line's still been great. Matt Hennessy hasn't allowed a single pressure. Vince Picozzi and Jovan Fair have played at close to an all-conference level. Adam Klein's played pretty well. I think he's taken a step past where he was. I don't think Isaac Moore's taken that step yet. I do wonder if at any point, if it continues down this trend, if they all of a sudden, if maybe they consider flipping Klein and Moore. And
That would
moving
be
Klein.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Klein played a little bit at left tackle at some points last year during Jeff Collins' tenure. I wonder if it's a comfort thing, like maybe he does just like being a right tackle better, but I wonder if they do want to protect Russo's blind side a little more.
Sam, what do you think?
I think it started off well. I agree with Kyle. I don't have anything crazy to add to that.
I mean, but is this kind of normal? Isn't this what you'd expect? Obviously, Hennessy is probably a future pro at center. Your guards are really experienced. Not to take anything away from Klein, he's been really solid. Both these guys saw a ton of experience, a ton of snaps as true freshmen. And I don't know if I'm assuming too much here. I don't know if there's obviously you can be rushed from both sides, but I don't know if there's just more intensity, more scrutiny placed on the guy who's protecting his blind side.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's just a little bit more from a psychological piece there. I don't know if this is just kind of a normal dip for Isaac Moore, and this is just to be expected.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a 19-year-old or 20, I don't know, a true sophomore from Sweden who hasn't played that much organized football. Like, I get it. Like, the whole point, when we thought last year, we talked to people, and they say, hey, maybe towards the end of the year, he'll be able to kind of be a backup. And then he was starting, and then now he's starting as a sophomore.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of a little bit too expected. I think he'll probably be better when he's an upperclassman than he is as an underclassman, but he's a weak point on that line right now.
Well, there you have it. Our 9th episode.
God,
Who
knows? They all blur together.
Flip over. Season 5, episode 9.
5-9.
Come to a close. Thank you to Sam Cohn for joining us today, setting
for
up our
having me,
new
guys.
gear.
Appreciate it.
We will talk to you next week with entertaining you with tales of Temple, Georgia Tech
It's a
football.
quick week next week. I think everyone's been so focused on Georgia Tech, myself included. It's
ECU.
a Thursday game next
Yeah.
week. So they're going to play, we're on Tuesday, twice in the next 9 days.
ECU Pirates.
ECU Pirates twice in the next 9
Not to be
days.
confused with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
They could be 4-1 this time next.
A couple of small market teams.
Yes, they could be 4-1 by next Friday in 10 days. And then they have 10 days to prepare for Memphis at that point.
All right. Thanks for sticking with us today. We will talk to you soon.